I know sounds like something from a movie, but it happened to me. I got home right at lunchtime, and guess what? I found my husband, Marcelo, in our hot tub with our neighbor, Sophia. Yes, Sophia, the woman I considered a friend, there, shamelessly, in my own house. My world, which was once so colorful and certain, collapsed into shades of gray and disbelief. What did I do? Defying every instinct to scream and explode, I closed the bathroom door with a terrifying calmness, and I turned the key. I locked them both inside. They, immersed in their moment, didn't even notice. Then I grabbed my cell phone and called Marcos, Sophia's husband. My voice, despite the internal storm, came out strangely controlled. Marcos, you need to come to my house now. It's urgent. There's something you really need to see, and I can't explain it over the phone. He, sensing the gravity from my tone, said he was on his way. At that moment, I didn't want to fight. I wanted justice, and a revenge that went beyond my darkest imagination. And to think this happened just 3 days after I had organized the most spectacular surprise birthday party for Marcelo. A party where I invested every bit of my soul and money. Over 1,000 reals in every detail, from decoration to food, including gifts and even a live band he had always dreamed of seeing. I spent weeks planning every tiny aspect to make that day perfect for him. If you are shocked by this story, please like it now and subscribe to the channel. I guarantee you won't want to miss what comes next, because the twist was simply unbelievable. My name is Clara, and I was 32 when all this happened. Until that day, I lived what seemed to be a fairy tale marriage. Marcelo and I had been married for 8 years, a story that began in college. We dated since the 3rd semester, and since then, we were inseparable. Or at least that's what I believed. Our life was one of those magazine cover lives, you know? Comfortable, organized, perfect. I, a marketing manager at a large company, always had a good salary. Marcelo, a civil engineer, also. 5 years ago, we had bought our dream house in a beautiful and quiet condominium called Recanto Sereno. About 8 months ago, Sophia, our neighbor, moved into the house next door with Marcos, her husband. He was a calm guy and traveled a lot for work. The 4 of us got along very well. We were those neighbors who barbecued together on weekends, exchanged visits for a glass of wine. I genuinely considered Sophia a friend, someone I trusted. The first signs that something was wrong began to emerge about 6 weeks before that fateful Wednesday. Marcelo started to become more distant. He would come home late from work, always had his cell phone in hand, and seemed to have a new excuse every day. Many projects, demanding bosses, overtime. I, naive, believed every word. After all, my trust in Marcelo was blind. I remember one particular night. I woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wasn't in bed. I got up to look for him and found him on the balcony, in the dark, with the glow of his cell phone illuminating his face as he smiled. When I asked what he was doing, he quickly locked the device, a noticeable nervousness in his tone, and said it was just a funny meme from a friend. I found it strange at the time, but I let it go, not connecting the dots. Sophia, the neighbor, and my friend also started acting strangely. She would show up at my house at unusual times, always with some excuse. But what really seemed to interest her was Marcelo's routine. What time did he get home? How was his work going? She absorbed every detail, every word I said about him, as if she were cataloging important information. And I, in my innocence, saw no malice. I simply didn't connect the facts. Then Marcelo's birthday arrived, that grand surprise party I planned with such care. I invited all the friends and family he liked, decorated the entire house so that everything would be impeccable. When he arrived and was faced with the surprise, emotion took over his face. Everyone shouted surprise. He hugged me tightly and whispered that I was the best wife in the world. At that moment, I felt like the happiest woman on the planet. Sophia and Marcos were also there, celebrating with us. But during the party, a feminine intuition triggered an alert. I noticed Marcelo and Sophia exchanging furtive glances, a bit too long. She seemed to find excuses to get closer to him, to talk, to lightly touch his arm while laughing at one of his jokes. I felt a tightening in my chest, a discomfort I tried to push away.
It couldn't be what I was thinking, could it? The party went on all night. After everyone left, Marcelo and I went to bed. He thanked me several times, saying it had been the best birthday of his life, kissed me, declared his love, and fell asleep. But I remained awake, with that strange feeling hammering in my chest, that inner voice we try to silence. In the following days, the strange behavior persisted. Marcelo started coming home late again, hiding with his cell phone. I started paying more attention. I noticed that whenever Sophia posted something in the neighbors group, he responded instantly. My messages, however, took hours to be answered. A constant knot in my stomach began to accompany me. Then that Wednesday finally arrived, 3 days after Marcelo's birthday party. I had an important meeting scheduled for the morning, but it was canceled at the last minute. One of those rare opportunities to go home for lunch, something I almost never did, preferring to eat near the office. I arrived at the Recanto Sereno condominium around 12:15 p.m. I greeted the security guard and drove to our house. Something caught my attention. Marcelo's car was in the garage. I found it strange, as he always claimed it was impossible to have lunch at home due to work. Perhaps, I thought, he had gotten an unexpected day off. I opened the door slowly, without making a sound. The house was in absolute silence. I called out for Marcelo, but there was no answer. I left my bag in the living room and went to the kitchen. Empty. I went upstairs, checking the bedrooms. That's when I heard it. The sound of running water mixed with muffled laughter, coming from our ensuite bathroom. My heart raced at an alarming pace. I walked slowly to the bathroom door, which was ajar. I peeked through the crack, and what I saw there shattered my world into 1,000 pieces. Marcelo was in our hot tub, and Sophia was with him. The two of them, embracing, laughing, kissing, completely at ease, as if the world was just theirs. I stood paralyzed for a few seconds, my mind trying to process the scene. My husband, in my house, in my bathtub, with my neighbor, the woman I trusted as a friend. A wave of intense anger surged through my body, and I started trembling uncontrollably. But in the midst of that emotional chaos, a chilling clarity struck me. Instead of exploding, screaming, or making a scene I would surely regret, I closed the door slowly, with the key on the outside. I turned it. They were so absorbed they didn't hear anything. I went downstairs, grabbed my cell phone, and dialed Marcos's number, Sophia's husband. He answered on the second ring. With the firmest voice I could muster, I said, "Marcos, can you come to my house now? It's urgent. There's something very important you need to see. I can't talk on the phone. Please, come immediately." He sensed the seriousness and said he was leaving work. While waiting for Marcos, I sat on the living room sofa, my head throbbing. Memories of the past few months intertwined. The hidden messages, the delays, the furtive glances at the party, Sophia's questions about Marcelo's routine. Everything made cruel sense now. They had been together for months, and I, the idiot who planned parties and dedicated herself to the marriage, was the last to know. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Marcos. He looked worried. "What happened?" he asked as soon as I opened the door. I just replied, "Come upstairs with me. Don't say anything. Just look." We went upstairs. The sound of water and laughter could still be heard, now more muffled, coming from the bathroom. Marcos looked at me confused. I approached the door, knocked 3 times forcefully. The laughter abruptly ceased. I heard Marcelo's voice, slightly irritated, asking, "Who is it?" I didn't answer. I just unlocked the door, opened it wide, and made space for Marcos. The scene he saw was the same one that destroyed my heart. His wife in the bathtub with my husband. The silence that fell was deafening. Sophia, in shock, tried to cover herself with her hands. Marcelo, pale, seemed frozen. Marcos stood in the doorway, a mixture of pain, anger, and deep disappointment in his eyes. I, leaning against the wall, watched everything, arms crossed, curious to see their pathetic attempt at an explanation. Marcelo was the first to stammer. "Clara, I can explain. It's not what you're thinking." I gave a dry, bitter laugh. "It's not what I'm thinking? You two in my bathtub, in my house, in the middle of the afternoon, and it's not what I'm thinking? Marcelo, please, at least have the decency not to make a fool of me now." Sophia burst into tears, saying it had been a terrible mistake, that she didn't know what had come over her, pleading, "Marcos, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this."
Marcos, who had been silent until then, reacted. He grabbed a towel and threw it at Sophia's face. "Get dressed and get out of my sight," he said, with a deep voice I never imagined he possessed. Sophia, trembling, picked up the towel and ran out of the bathroom. I followed her to the guest room, where, with unbelievable audacity, she had left her clothes. "How long?" I asked, my voice a threatening whisper. She looked at me, startled. "How long, Sophia? Answer." Her tears increased. 2 months. It started 2 months ago. My stomach churned. 2 months. 60 days of lies and blatant betrayal. We went down to the living room. Marcelo had already gotten out of the tub and put on some clothes, but he didn't dare to approach me as Marcos stood between us. "Stay away from her," Marcos growled. "You've caused enough damage already." Marcelo still tried to argue, suggesting we could talk like adults, resolve it civilly. I just wanted to laugh at his cynicism. But it was what happened next that truly changed the game. Marcos looked at Sofia and said, "You need to tell her." Sofia turned even paler and shook her head desperately. "Marcos, no, please," she begged. "Tell me what?" I asked, feeling a strange fear. Marcos then looked at me and said, "Ask your husband who paid for Sofia's cosmetic surgery last month." My jaw dropped. I looked at Marcelo, who looked away. My head began to spin. Sofia had had no surgery and lip fillers and had told me she had saved for years for it. But now everything clicked into place. "Marcelo, did you pay for her surgery?" I asked, my voice trembling. His silence was the most painful confession. "It was 15,000 reais, Marcos continued, explaining that he had discovered the transfer in their joint account statement. The money came from an account I had never seen, and guess whose it was? Your husband's. I sat on the sofa, my legs giving out. Not only was he cheating on me, but he was spending our money from our savings, which I also worked hard to earn, on his mistress. It was a level of cruelty I never would have imagined. Marcos wasn't finished. And there's more. That trip they took to the coast 3 weeks ago, they said they were with different groups, but they were together. I found photos on her phone that she forgot to delete, staying in the same hotel in the same room, while I was traveling for work and you were here working. I remembered. Marcelo had said he was going to an engineer's retreat, Sofia that she would visit her mother in the countryside. The lies, the whole weeks together, while we were made to look like fools, the humiliation was indescribable. At that moment, pain and sadness gave way to a cold determination. I stood up and looked at Marcelo. "You have 30 minutes to pack your things and leave my house." He tried to argue, to talk about therapy, about impulsiveness. I just repeated, 30 minutes. Marcos, turning to Sofia, said the same. 20 minutes. Take the essentials now. The rest of your things I'll leave on the sidewalk. I don't want you in my house ever again. She tried to approach, apologizing, saying she loved him. He recoiled. "You lost the right to speak of love with me." They both left to pack their bags. Marcos and I remained silent in the living room. He finally spoke. "I'd suspected for weeks, but I had no proof. When you called, I was sure. I'm sorry you found out this way." I replied. "I suspected too, but I refused to believe it. I guess we always know. We just don't want to accept it." He told me about Sofia's changes, the excuses, the cheater's handbook, I thought. When the 30 minutes were up, Marcelo came down with 2 bulky suitcases. He stopped in front of me, trying one last time. "Clara, please, let's talk. I love you. It was a terrible mistake. I can prove I've changed." I looked into his eyes and said, with a firm voice, "You cheated on me for 2 months, spent our money on her, lied every day. And you think I'm going to give you a second chance? Never come near me again." He left with his head down. Soon after, Sofia came down with a small suitcase. She didn't even look at me. She ran after Marcos, who was already leaving. When the door closed, I collapsed on the living room floor and cried. I cried out everything I had held back. The pain, the anger, the sadness for the broken marriage, for the shattered trust, for the wasted years. But that crying didn't last long. I wouldn't allow myself to be destroyed by it. I got up, wiped away my tears, and began to plan my next steps. First, I called a divorce lawyer a friend had recommended. Appointment scheduled for the next day. Second, I changed all the passwords for our joint accounts and blocked the shared credit cards. Third, I sent a message to Marcelo's family, telling them the essentials, without sordid details, but making it clear that he had cheated on me with a neighbor and that the marriage had ended. I wanted them to know the truth before he invented his own version. The support was unanimous. Even his mother called me, apologizing. In the following days, I immersed myself in the divorce proceedings. The lawyer was an angel. We discovered that Marcelo had made several suspicious transfers, not only for Sofia's surgery, but also for expensive dinners, hotels, and gifts. In total, he had spent almost 50,000 reals of our money on his mistress. 50,000 reals that were for our retirement, for the house renovation,
for our future. The lawyer filed a request for restitution of these amounts. Since it was money from a joint account used for infidelity, I had the right to get it back. I also asked for the house, as I had made the larger down payment and paid most of the installments. Marcelo tried to contest, but the evidence was irrefutable. Meanwhile, Marcos was also divorcing Sofia. We started talking more, exchanging information about the processes, venting about the situation. It wasn't romance, it was just the solidarity of two people who had gone through the same pain. We discovered we had a lot in common besides the betrayal. A month after the discovery, Marcelo appeared at my door, wanting to talk, to truly apologize. He said he had ended everything with Sofia, that she was a phase of confusion, that I was the love of his life. I listened in silence. When he finished, I said, "Marcelo, I don't hate you, but I don't forgive you either. What you did ended any chance of reconciliation. Now I just want you to sign the divorce papers and get out of my life." He insisted for a few more weeks, with long messages, flowers, letters. I ignored everything. I blocked his number and asked my lawyer to make it clear that any communication should only be done through the lawyers. I would not allow him to manipulate me with empty promises. 2 months later, the divorce came through. I kept the house, he had to return the 50,000 reals to me, and we divided the rest of the assets fairly. It was an immense relief. The marriage was officially over, and I could finally start over. Sofia and Marcos also divorced. She tried to keep the house, but since it was bought before the marriage and was in Marcos's name, he kept it. She had to move out of the Recanto Sereno condominium. I heard she tried to continue with Marcelo, but he didn't want to. Apparently, after the affair became public and he lost half of everything, his interest in her evaporated. What a surprise, right? 6 months after all the upheaval, I was in a completely different place. I went to therapy, reconnected with friends I had neglected, traveled alone for the first time. I learned to value my own company. The house, which once brought me bitter memories, was completely renovated. I painted all the walls, replaced the furniture, redid the bathroom. It was like a physical and emotional fresh start. Marcos and I remained friends. We met for coffees and conversations, sharing our pains and progress. It was comforting to have someone who understood exactly what I had been through. One day, after a dinner with friends, he invited me out. Not as friends, but as a real date. I accepted. Our first date was magical. We talked for hours, laughed, shared stories that went far beyond the betrayal that brought us together. I discovered a funny, intelligent, attentive Marcos, qualities I had never noticed when he was just the neighbor's husband. The night ended with a timid kiss that made my stomach flutter with butterflies for the first time in years. We started dating slowly. Neither of us wanted to rush things, but over time it became clear that we had something special, based on respect, honesty, and a deep understanding of each other's pains. Marcos treated me as I deserved to be treated, with affection, consideration, and unwavering loyalty. A year after that shocking day, Marcos and I were living together in my house. Life had come full circle. What started as the worst day of my life ended up leading me to the best relationship I've ever had. It's fascinating how destiny operates. If I hadn't come home that day, I might still be living a lie. Marcelo tried to reappear a few times when he found out about my relationship with Marcos. He sent messages that I had planned everything, that I had cheated on him with Marcos from the beginning. Hilarious.
I didn't even respond. I blocked him for good. Sofia also tried an approach, meeting me at the market and apologizing, regretting having destroyed 2 families. I looked at her and said, "Sofia, I don't forgive you, but I also don't think about you anymore. You occupy no space in my life. I wish you happiness, far from me." And I continued my shopping. Today, 3 years later, I can affirm that that day in the bathtub was a blessing in disguise. Did it hurt? Incomparably. Was it humiliating? Yes, but it was also liberating. It freed me from a marriage where I was not valued, from a man who didn't deserve me, from a fake friend, and it guided me to a much better life. Marcos proposed to me 2 months ago during a trip to the mountains. I said yes without hesitation. This time, I know it's real, based on truth, partnership, genuine love. We have already overcome the worst and emerged stronger. If that's not proof of a solid relationship, I don't know what is. If you are going through infidelity right now, I want to tell you, it will hurt. You will question yourself, feel humiliated, think you will never get over it. But you will, and you will emerge stronger, wiser, ready for the love you truly deserve. Don't settle for crumbs. You deserve someone who chooses you every day without hesitation. And if you are the one cheating, the truth always comes out. And when it does, you will lose not only the betrayed person, but your reputation, your peace, and often your assets. It's not worth it. If you're not happy, end it, but don't cheat. Cheating is not a mistake, it's a conscious choice. I look back and am grateful for the courage to lock that door and call Marcos. Exposing the truth changed my life for the better. The truth always sets you free, even if it hurts. There are those who defend second chances. I respect that, but for me, broken trust leaves cracks. The best revenge is not scandal, but being happy. Rebuild your life, find someone who values you, and show them that you didn't need them. When Marcelo sees me with Marcos today, I know he regrets it, and that's enough for me. Thank you for watching until the end. Leave a like, share your story in the comments. Let's support each other. You deserve transparent, loyal, and true love. Don't accept less. Subscribe for more stories and turn on notifications. Until next time.